Alright, there's this game that I've had a very difficult relationship with for a long time now. um, it's Nocturne. It's Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne. I'd say that game and like Persona 3 are feverishly beloved in their communities, in their respective communities. Or like you could look at them as sort of the high watermark in S&T in general. Like I always get the sense those are the two games that most kind of old school S&T fans are very big fans of. And those are also the two games specifically that I don't like. And I've had a very difficult time explaining why. I used to always just get into dumb Twitter fights. And obviously Twitter is the fucking worst. In a lot of ways. But also it's just impossible to explain your feelings properly on that kind of platform. So I always had this desire, this like burning like wish in my heart to make a video about each of those games. Just talking off the cuff about my feelings, why I didn't really enjoy them. So today it's Nocturne's turn. You could say it's Nocturne's press turn. Mostly because my good friend Matt, who's gonna be listening to this, recently played through it for the first time, and that's why it's kind of been on my mind. I'm gonna try my best not to sound like a huge asshole. I like talked with him about it a little bit. And it was already like so hard for me to hold back. Like it's so funny because he like messaged me. He's like, yeah, I really enjoy this game. It's pretty cool, right? And I'm just like, I'm that one clip of Donald in Kingdom Hearts 3 just going nuts. That's me. Yeah. I'm gonna spoil everything, by the way. So yeah, if I mean, I want to say if you haven't played it, maybe don't listen to this. But like, I wouldn't recommend playing it. You know, it's the thing. There really isn't anything to spoil. IMO, right? But yeah. So the premise of this game is that there's like this occult there's this occult group of people who basically are just really unhappy with how the world like with the status quo, right? It's basically the way Nocturne begins is just our world. Our modern day reality, which is then upended through some kind of fucked up occult ritual. Basically, the whole world. Wait, it's not destroyed. Basically, what happens is that the Earth just kind of like it folds in on itself, so that it instead of being like a big ball, the Earth is now like a sphere, and we live inside the sphere, right? It's kind of hard to explain, but yeah, if you've played it, you know what I mean. And in the process, it's just turned into a wasteland. And one of the leaders of that of that cult is your teacher, your school teacher. You're a high school student, and she knows this other guy, and this other guy, I guess he kind of feels sorry for you. Was that how it was? I don't know. Basically, you just get you are infused with demonic powers, and that, you know, it turns you into the demi-fiend, right? The fucking iconic protagonist of the game. And it lets you survive the harsh demonic reality that you're in now. Because like I said, the world has turned to a wasteland. All the people all the humans who previously lived in the world, most of them are now ghosts. The world is ruled by demons, and they're just roaming everywhere. And there are only a few select people who sort of were able to like retain their consciousness and their self as they transitioned into this new world. And what the game is about now is that it's essentially a race between these different factions. I'm gonna take a sip from my water occasionally. By the way, I'm sorry. I think the idea was that if you are human and you have like managed to retain your consciousness and all that, you have the ability to reshape this wasteland in your image. So it's a race between all these different factions to attain this power, right? To prove that they're worthy of wielding this power, and that they're going to be the ones who decide what the world is going to be like. So in that sense, Nocturne is kind of rethinking a lot of the tenets of Shin Megami Tensei. I guess I should have mentioned this is the third home console mainline SMT game. The traditional setup in the older games was always, and like, you know, in stuff that came after Nocturne, you were just a guy, and then there's one law guy, and there's a chaos guy, and through your choices throughout the game, you kind of you let the game determine which side you're on, and that changes the how the plot plays out to some extent. And it's always been these very clear alignments. It's always been law, chaos, and then in the middle somewhere is neutral, right? Whereas Nocturne, it takes those ideas and kind of rethinks them a little bit, but then also adds new stuff. And the way the game plays out is that the story is completely linear. All the events play out in a set order. And part of that is how you meet all the different faction leaders. So like you wake up in this new world, you don't know what the fuck is going on. And it's been a while since I played it, but basically random characters just keep telling you, oh, go here, do this, right? And in the process, you kind of get broiled up in these micro conflicts between all these factions. The earliest example, we have the strength dudes. You fight Thor and shit, and prove your strength and all that, and then the guy's like, oh, you're pretty strong, do you want to join us? That's sort of the blueprint for how the entire game plays out. And like that already, to me, this whole system doesn't work for two reasons. Number one is, so I just explained, blah, you do some shit, and then they ask you, okay, do you want to join us? There is like no feasible scenario where you can actually answer that question with yes. And the reason for that is because, like I said, the order that you meet the faction leaders in is strictly linear, right? So even if that first guy appeals to you, his whole philosophy, right? Let's assume that he does. It's like you already know, well, I'm gonna be locked into this choice, right? And this is the very beginning of the game. So it's probably not very intelligent to say yes, and then meet another faction later that appeals to me way more, where I can't say yes anymore, right? And the game actually, I mean, you can just say yes to everyone, but the game actually gives you the bad ending for that. And I think that's kind of cool, right? I think that's, that feels like it makes sense, that makes thematic sense, it's appropriate. it just shows that you were so weak-willed, I guess. You didn't follow through on a single ideology. You kind of just tried to please everyone, and by that you ended up pleasing no one. So that's like the only ending in the game that makes sense to me. But yeah, realistically, if you're actually putting yourself in this situation, if you're actually thinking about it, about, you know, the plot, right? For me, it makes absolutely no sense to say yes to any of them. Because, again, at no point do you actually know what's ahead and who might appeal to you more. And, yeah, I mean, if this wasn't obvious, what I'm implying here by everything I've said so far is that you can't actually go back, right? You can't meet all the factions and then say, okay, now I'm gonna pick one, right? It's not like that. It's not like Dark Souls, for example, with the Covenants, where you meet them, right? And then you can just say, I don't know, right? And then you can return later and change your mind. Now, obviously, the Covenant system isn't perfect either, but, like, it makes way more sense, because the game actually is non-linear, and there is no, like, there really is no telling which one you're gonna meet first, except for Way of the White, because they're right next to Firelink Shrine. But other than that, like, it's fair game. So yeah, that already makes no sense, right? Like, if the game really was going for this whole idea, there's like a lot of things to choose from, and we want to make all of them kind of feel viable and interesting, then I don't understand why it has to be so linear, JRPG, railroady. And like, that's another thing about the game that's just very frustrating, is that it doesn't use its world and its environments very well. I felt like, especially in the first half of the game, I would just constantly have to go back and forth between the same couple of locations, for like no really great apparent reason. It's just, oh, some shit happened in this fucking town that you were in 3 hours ago. I guess you have to go back, right? It never feels organic. It never feels like, oh, I'm exploring the world kind of for a reason and to further my own goals. It's just kind of always random assholes telling you to do things. Which, like, with the whole spirit of the game, right? It just makes no sense. I feel like the vibe of the game is, oh, I'm Demi-Fiend, dude. Fuck everyone. I'm just gonna do my own thing. That's the vibe of the game, but it's not... Like, the game never gives you sort of a foundation where you can really feel like you make your own choices and set your own goals. You never really understand the world fully enough that you want to explore it or engage with it, and it's not like you can do those things, right? The other thing that doesn't work about the alignment system is that the characters are just really paper thin, and they're just fucking assholes. See, and like, trust me, I'm not an idiot. I get that the characters are not really characters, right? They represent concepts more than anything. But the net result still is that I can't relate to anyone. I can't understand anyone. I can't really follow their logic. My favorite example of this, and I tried to explain this to my friend Matt. I think I just didn't do a good job explaining it, but like, so you have these you have your fucking high school friends, Chiaki and Isamu, and they get broiled up in this as well, and somehow they also retain their humanity to some extent. So yeah, they're one of those select few people who actually have the potential to change the world. And what we see is that Isamu isolates himself, right? And his idea is that he wants to create a world where basically he wants the third impact from Evangelion, the fucking human instrumentality project where everyone is just kind of isolated. What was it like? Yeah, it was kind of like, it's not really like that, no. You get my point. He wants to create a world where he does not have to interact with people at all. People are just completely isolated from each other. And then Chiaki is the exact opposite. She's on this fucking power trip. She is like a half demon, white hair, devil trigger lady, and just murders random people. And it's like you can understand why this sort of happens a little bit, right? Like why this would happen, this sort of thing. You understand how they would go crazy, right? That's not difficult to understand. My problem is more the fact that I have no reason to think that their ideas are good ideas, right? They don't give me a compelling reason ever to think that, oh yeah, this fucking world that Chiaki wants to create where people just fucking kill each other. That's a good idea, man. Like, and the way I try to explain it to Matt is like, oh, if there had been some kind of inciting incident, right, where I see why this attitude is the correct attitude. Like why isolating yourself, for example, and shielding yourself from the pain. That would have helped me understand him and potentially want to join him, right? Join his cause and accept his ideas. But no, instead, they just dump vague monologues on you. Yeah, where they just explain the concepts and the ideas in these really broad terms. But it's not. Yeah, I want to know what kinds of experiences other people had with the game, because I just can't imagine there being like a single faction where they actually provide a compelling reason to join them. Yeah, like you have these clay people. I forget what they're called, but like they're just people made of clay and they don't have souls, right? So they can't even have their own reason. I think that's kind of an interesting idea, right? And like that was like the one faction that felt kind of fleshed out, you know? It felt like, oh, you can kind of tell that they have a rough deal in life. And they just want to create a world where they are accepted, right? And where they can live in peace. And that's like, whoa, that actually makes sense. I can relate to that. I could see myself joining them, but then obviously that's not even an option. But yeah, all the other ones are just like, oh, fucking, I like killing people. And, oh, I like being strong. And, yeah, I struggle to see where the compelling reasons are to join anyone, right? And that's why it really confuses me when people say that Nocturne has like better, quote-unquote, better characters than, and here it is, right? Than Shin Megami Tensei 4. That's my favorite Shin Megami Tensei game. I played it before Nocturne, and I can't help but compare Nocturne to it. And I'm not saying Nocturne is bad because it's not that game, right? That's not my point. It just provides a good perspective to look at Nocturne from, in my opinion. Because you can say, oh, okay, Walter and Jonathan are pretty generic characters, I guess. But if you just look at them in the context of the game, in the concept of what the game is trying to do, it makes perfect sense the way they are. The game keeps showing them in different situations and providing compelling reasons for why, like, each of them has a point. And it keeps putting you through moral dilemmas. And yeah, you can say it's generic, right? but like it's still effective because it makes you think about the situation. You can actually understand where they're coming from. You can understand why they're making the choices that they do. And again, it's not about making them quote-unquote compelling characters. It's more about making you think about the situation and making you want to care about what is happening, right? And making you want to make a choice. In Nocturne, I never felt compelled to make a choice. I didn't care about anything. I just kept saying no. Again, both because of the structure of the game, because it just made the most sense, but also because I just didn't care, right? Like none of the factions provided me compelling reasons to join them, or to even consider joining them. And the world is so uninteresting and underdeveloped, and again, in that sense, it's also the polar opposite of SMT4, where that game is so rich and has so much, like, interesting backstory, so much to discover, so much to explore. The world is so beautiful, so many nooks and crannies, whereas Nocturne is just ugly, repetitive hallways, empty rooms upon empty rooms. You can have a dungeon at the start of the game and one at the very end, and they'll just look the exact same. It's these constant fucking labyrinthine intersecting hallways. And it's like, I mean, it's a third-person game, but they just kept the exact design structure of the Super Nintendo SMTs. Like, it really is just like straight flat hallways that kind of intersect. That's like every dungeon in this game. They have like one big room that's kind of cool in every dungeon, and then everything is just fucking hallways. It's so fucking painfully repetitive. I think that one was like one of my biggest gripes with the game, just how ugly and boring and, again, like I said, repetitive the world is. And again, maybe that's unfair, right? And because that's my favorite thing about SMT4, that the world is so interesting and so layered, and like it doesn't really hold your hand. You explore the world because you want to. The goals of your character and the player are just in perfect alignment. And in Nocturne, I never get that sense. In Nocturne, the world, again, like I said, it's very underdeveloped, and like, yeah, me, the player, and Demi-Fiend, we both kind of just want to know what the fuck is going on, but the game never provides an avenue to do that, to find that out. It's always just, oh, fucking do this random thing, go here. And like I said, that inherently just kind of goes against the vibe of the game, what you kind of expect it to be. And for me, it culminated in one of the most fucking unsatisfying, underwhelming, frustrating endings ever, where because I said no all the time to all of the faction leaders, I got the neutral ending, which basically the world just goes back to normal, and it's like, oh, fucking good job, guy, you did it, right? That it's just the normal fucking happy ending. And like, number one, there's like no, like I said, the game never provided motivation for me to want to achieve a happy ending, or like any kind of ending, to be honest. So like, from that perspective, I don't really care about it, and like, it wraps itself up so quickly and without any kind of fuzz. It's so fucking dumb. And then, like, it's just like, I don't feel like I did anything that special, right? Like, the game makes this big deal. Oh, dude, you're like a fucking free spirit. You forged your own path. You rejected the proven fucking concepts. You walk to the path of thorns, right? That's what the game literally says. And then the reward for that is you just get the fucking generic happy ending. Like, really? I was not invested in my choices at all, you know? And again, I talked to Matt about this. And his interpretation of the ending, of the neutral ending, which he also got, is that it's basically the sheeple ending. It's just you picked the easiest way out. And when the game is patting you on the back, it's more like sarcastic and satirical. Like that yes, you've achieved peace, but like you have to consider that that this kind of peace previously didn't last, right? So it's probably not gonna last here either. It's only temporary. And I gotta be honest, I reject this interpretation completely. I don't agree with it at all. And like I can kind of, I'm sorry if I'm like, yeah, I have to stress again. I'm trying not to be an asshole. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Matt. Like, I'm just not seeing it at all. That the game. See, okay, even if I concur that it's supposed to be satirical and sarcastic, that makes it even worse. You know, for me, because, like, in the strictest sense, that like rejecting everyone and like forging my own path, that is what I did, right? In the strictest sense, the game is correct. So I don't think it makes sense now to like criticize that, to say, oh, you picked the easy way out, man. No, like I literally didn't. I literally did not do that. So that's why I'm not on board with this interpretation. It's like an Ava 3.3 thing, you know. Where it's like, you enjoyed the power trip of the last movie? Oh, guess what? You're a fucking asshole. Like, no, I don't think I'm an asshole for having enjoyed that second movie. Fuck you. Mm-hmm. I guess, like, if that's what the neutral ending was going for, then no. I don't accept that. I don't think that would be a good ending. And, like, I don't, like, again, like I said, I don't think that's what the game was going for anyway. I think it really is a genuine happy ending, right? There's nothing in the text implying otherwise to me. And I think they just like being vague. They just like not really developing things very deeply, you know? I think that's just the style of the game. That's why it is that way. And I'm not a fan of it. So those are like my biggest issues with Nocturne, right? The things that just make it. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I find the world very uninteresting, and I'm not really motivated to do anything in the game, right? I have no motivation to keep going at all. I feel like if the RPG part of the game, you know, the combat, exploration, all that shit, if that hooked me more, I probably still wouldn't enjoy the game very much. But my god, like mechanically and systems wise, and in terms of the interface, the Nocturne feels like it's just designed to piss you off. And it's not even there. Like, there was no point where I really felt that challenge, and it's like one of the most memed games in existence, you know, in terms of the challenge. And I don't really see it. Like, there was nothing I was that stuck on ever. It was just so. So one of the most aggravating things about this game is that the key to Shin Megami Tensei is this whole weakness system. You need to exploit the enemy's weaknesses. So in Persona, they have this system where you just do an attack, and then after that, the game tells you how the enemy reacts to that element, right? And the game remembers that information, so you can just look it up at any time. You can just press L. I say press L because Persona 4 on the Vita. Yeah, and then you can just once you've gone through that trial and error process, you can just reliably access that information as much as you want. And I think that's probably the best system, because you use your intuition to like feel out the enemy's weaknesses as quickly as you can without wasting turns and without wasting moves, without wasting MP. I mean, I think that really is the best system, and you get immediate feedback, and I think that's really good. In Shin Megami Tensei 4, they have this system where I think if you kill the enemy once, that information becomes available. Like, you can always just look at the analyze screen, but unless you've killed the enemy at least one time, you can't see the weaknesses. And I think the reason they did it this way, compared to Persona, is because of the whole dialogue system, right? Because you can resolve a lot of encounters without actually fighting. And if you then still knew the weaknesses, that would probably feel kind of cheap. So that's why they did it this way, that you have to kill the enemy at least once. It's kind of interesting to think these just little tiny changes that they have to make depending on the combat system. In Nocturne, the way it's handled is that you have a skill called Analyze, and that lets you look at the information for that respective enemy that you're targeting, and it uses a turn every time you use it. And that skill, not every demon has it, so you have to have the right party member, you have to have them use it, you have to have them use a turn to look at the information. And then even, that in itself, not that offensive, but like doing that once does not let you just look at that information again, right? You can't just hit a button at any time and then see the information that you've gathered. No, you have to use the analyze skill every single time that you want to see the information. And it's such a nonsensical fucking system. It doesn't make the game any more challenging. It just takes up your time. Because yeah, there's nothing stopping you from just writing the information down, right? Or taking a photo. It's just an extra hassle. And I don't understand why they didn't just implement a fucking button, you know, to look at it. And it makes the game, like, you wouldn't believe how much more aggravating this one thing makes the entire combat to me. It sounds like this is not a big deal, but I think it is. Yeah, and there's like a couple tiny more things like that. For example, you can't see the status or, you know, the information for your party members while you're in combat. So you can't see what every skill does. You can't just hit a button, get an explanation or anything like that. You can't look at your own weaknesses. It's just not possible. And that also, I don't know. It makes the game so difficult to play. There's so much to fucking remember. It's such a, again, it's a needless hassle. There's like, yeah, it feels like an oversight, you know? It feels like, I mean, because they did implement those kinds of features in the later SMT games, where in Persona I can just see what every persona does before I change to it, so I can make an informed choice. Whereas here, if I don't exactly remember like the names of every demon and fucking what skills they had and shit, God. And then the fusion system, where they just randomly pick skills, which means that if you back out of the menu and then do the fusion again, they just pick a different set of skills randomly, right? So you have to do this, you have to back out and go back in until you get the moves that you want, until you get the skills that you want. And in the later games, they just let you pick the skills that you want, right? Just by hand. And again, needless hassle. Fucking bloats the playtime. Like, you wouldn't believe how much of their time this takes up. This kind of shit. And I've heard people say, oh, just deal with the bad roll, man. That's like the design of the game, dude. I refuse to believe that anyone plays the game that way. Just don't try to look cool on the internet, okay? I refuse to believe that anyone actually plays the game that way. And like, yeah, I've seen the argument, oh, picking skills by hand makes the game easier or something. No, it doesn't. You can, in Nocturne, you can just get all the skills you want. You just need to be patient. You just need to have the patience of a saint to get the skills that you want. Whereas in SMT4, you could just pick them, right? It takes a second. And in Nocturne, there are skills that you can't transfer over, right? And it's the same thing in every other SMT game. But you know what? In every other SMT game, they just gray those skills out. They just say, okay, you can't transfer that over. Because whatever, right? It's too powerful or something. Nocturne is not transparent about that. So you might want to transfer over a skill, but it just isn't possible. And you don't know that, so you just keep backing in and out of the menu until you realize, actually, yeah, that's probably not possible, right? It's such a goddamn waste of your time. I'm so fucking heated now. What's the other thing? The random encounters. Like I said earlier, the level design of Nocturne is just fucking Super Nintendo first-person dungeons. But like, those games where it's tile-based and the perspective brought you in pretty close, you felt like the game was moving really fast. I was always, like, if you move once, and then you trigger a random counter, you're still like, okay, I got that one step of progress, right? You're always making consistent progress, and that's good about those games. Whereas Nocturne, it has the same kind of level design, but with free 3D movement. And what that means is that just tilting the analog stick a millimeter can trigger a random encounter. And it's like they made the game 3D and they kept the random encounters, and they didn't think about how that would actually make the pacing of the game way worse. The random encounters in Nocturne feel way worse and way more egregious than in older Shin Megami Tensei games. To me, at least. Just because of this whole 3D movement system, right? I feel like I'm making slower progress than I did in those games. And then the dungeon design. Oh. Like, I used this example recently on Twitter. There's like Red Temple toward the very end of the game. There's this big hallway with 6 doors, I think, and 5 of them are traps. And one of the doors is correct, right? One of the doors is the one that you have to go through. And there's like no indication which is the correct one. You just have to fucking try and error it. And that's the entire game in a nutshell. The most optimal way to get through the dungeons is to just know where all the bullshit is, you know? It's not satisfying to explore them at all, because you know, like, none of the branching paths, none of the optional areas are any interesting or any worthwhile. It's just gonna get you in trouble. Like, yeah, I like, for example, in Zelda, right? You make informed decisions on where to go based on your memory of certain areas, or based on the items you have, or based on the keys you have collected. And the environments are so interesting and so well designed that you want to explore them. Whereas Nocturne, everything looks the same. Everything's super boring. And... it's not challenging. It's just fucking trial and error. It's... like, there's no logic or rhyme or reason to how the dungeons function. And that's why it really baffles me when people say, oh, fucking SMT4, what a shit game, doesn't have real dungeons. Like Nocturne did. What real dungeons? Like, first of all, SMT4 does have dungeons, right? And they're way more interesting. Like, the way you have to use the climbing feature, and how many nooks and crannies they have, and how every dungeon kind of has a different geographical theme, right? Like, some are pretty wide and open, some have you going up, some are very interconnected with shortcuts and stuff. It's really varied and interesting, and Nocturne is just this constant fucking bullshit. I think about a game like Etrian Odyssey. Well, no, that's not even a good example. Think about a game like Persona 4, where the dungeons are just randomized, right? The challenge just becomes to feel out what the correct path is. Well, I mean, you can do the optional stuff as well, and it's worth it, you know, because you're grinding and because you're getting items and shit. But, like, yeah, basically you have to just min-max your time. You don't want to go down branches where you just know it's a dead end. So you kind of have to use trial and error and intuition to feel out where the correct path is, right? But Nocturne isn't like that, you know, it's not, the dungeons aren't randomized. There is kind of a set path through the dungeon, and there is some backtracking. And like I said, there's no logic to what a good path is and what a not good path is, you know? It's just, you just have to know, right? Or you have to be willing to fall into traps for 30 hours. Yeah. What a fucking shit game. I'm so angry. I'm glad I got this off my chest, though. God damn. I think, like, you can't listen to this and then not see where I'm coming from, I think. You know? Even if you disagree with me completely, I think you can see where I'm coming from, right? After this, hopefully. Yeah. Support me on Patreon. Thanks for your donations. I'll catch you in the Persona 3 video next month. I'll probably do that next month. Yeah. So one of the August videos is gonna be on Persona 3. Why I don't like that game. Yeah. Until then, bye bye.